Hello, a very good morning to you. Thank you for staying with us on Niger Live Television this Tuesday morning. This is the paper review segment of our programming for the day. My name is Henry Ahamuefula, and for the paper review segment, I'm joined by Glad Yaki, so we could check out some stories that are making the way headlines across Nigeria. Good morning, Glad. It's good to have you.
Good to be here.
Welcome. Let's start off with the leadership paper this morning. And above the nameplate of the leadership paper is a story around northern leaders raising concerns over rising attacks. And very close to that story is a story around ICPC presses 9 fresh charges against El Rufai, contained on page 6 rather of the leadership paper. And still on page 6, there's a story around Tinubu not wanting opposition to exist, saying Obi, and also Wike clarifying Kubo bus terminal roof damage, saying no structure collapsed. That's also on page 20 of the leadership paper. The big story, or some sort of advertorial there anyways, is around the NRS and the commissioning that the president is built to do, commissioning of their headquarters that the president is built to do. That's a story that you get off the leadership paper this morning. And away from that to the Daily Independent, the latest stories around telcos linking slow 5G rollout to states and councils hurdles. And above the nameplate, Army confirms death of Colonel, 6 soldiers in clash with terrorists. Nigeria's external reserves to decline to $47 billion in 2026, says Fitch. Well, I think other stories there. 11 feared dead as herdsmen raid Benue communities. Shatima advocates national framework to foster youth leadership. Tinubu meets security chiefs over Jili Market airstrikers. Mid-US travel warning. That's the story on page 7. The story of the Daily Independent paper and some other papers this morning are pretty much reporting around the insecurity around a colonel who died alongside 6 soldiers in clash with terrorists, and also 11 being feared dead as herdsmen raid Benue communities. Yaki, your thoughts about all of these, from the Jili Market to before the Jili Market, there were even stories that a Brigadier General Oseni passed in very, very heinous circumstances, and well, only 2-3 days after we're hearing of a colonel who died alongside 6 soldiers, paid the ultimate price alongside 6 soldiers, a sad one. And also in Benue, talks around headers and security breaches and all of those. But what do you make of this, especially the Jili Market? I saw somewhere, if the terrorists do not get you, then those who are expected to protect you might just get you thinking you are a terrorist. That's what many people think happened in Jili Market.
Well, the situation is very unfortunate for the Jili Market operation. A lot of talks have been, a lot of condemnation have been coming up, but at least from the military perspective, they say the market has been closed for about 5 years. So not civilians were even severely expected to be in that environment, and it's been alleged that the people operating in that region were actually terrorists, so they labeled it as a terrorist then. So that was like justification for carrying out the operation, But regardless, the number of people that were killed in that operation is pretty high. And if you're going to be looking at the casualties, I'm not really sure, because we don't necessarily have the statistics yet. We don't know how many women, how many children were killed in that operation. Well, irrespective of the fact that you're saying you're carrying out an attack and terrorists have been killed, if children and women had been killed, it should be condemned. But I want to maybe at least accept the fact that maybe it was a terrorist then, and it was necessary, because I've always been one of those that's been clamoring that the military should also be carrying out should be on the offensive, because I feel like they've been very reactive of late. And with regards to the general who was killed, that's something that has been happening in Nigeria for a long time. These terrorists, they've been emboldened by the lapses of the military. I believe at this point the country should even have crushed these terrorists at this, but still they still persist, and I think they become even worse, and it's now more widespread.
Well, the Minister of Defense had mentioned that if you are around terrorists. If you're a friend of terrorists, then you are a terrorist. But can we really say that's something reasonable to say? Because you know that these terrorists, they use humans as shield.
As shield, yes.
You know, and if you do that, it means it's not at the discretion of these humans to leave when they can.
Well, one of the things that happens is that these terrorists sometimes they take control of an area that is normally inhabited by the residents there, and then for the residents they have to make the decision: do I leave this environment, or do I have to stay under the role
It's
of
an area
this?
that
Yes.
you
So-
are a native of,
Yes,
indigenous to.
so it's really difficult for some of these people to leave, and we've seen in cases where there were times where Boko Haram did control large parts of Borno State, Yobe, and Adamawa as well. I think they had control of the 3 states, and they also had control of Maiduguri as well. So the residents were still there. They had to be paying taxes to the terrorists. So irrespective of the fact that these locals or the civilians are living alongside the terrorists, it does not necessarily make them terrorists. But the military is coming out and saying they're probably aiding the terrorists, which is pretty tough to accept, But I always will stand by the fact that regardless of if you want to say they are living amongst the terrorists, women and children should not be killed. Well, the casualties were pretty high in that attack.
Alrighty, let's check out the New Telegraph paper. Shatima demands new framework for youth leadership development is a story that's contained on page 3 of the paper. NNPP faction insists on recognition, writes INEC. ICPC court adjourns El-Rufai's bail hearing till today. Alright, so that's something we're expecting of today, but the fall of today, we must have gotten that particular one. There are other stories, big developments we're expecting today. Well, the ADC convention is being held today. Also, the Supreme Court hearing of the ADC and the PDP cases are also being held today. But there are papers who are reporting on that, and so we'll check that in a bit. Wiki is also making it to the New Telegraph paper this morning with his talk around not denying ADC use of Eagle Square. He says, ADC reps demand Ahamuefula's sack and prosecution, and they say democracy is in danger. This is as over 2,500 delegates arrive Abuja for their convention. We'll talk about this ADC story in a bit, but the Middle East crisis also makes it to the New Telegraph paper with the Strait of Hormuz blockade and China saying that it is against global interest and they urge restraint. There's also a story around Pope that's a rider to that Middle East crisis story. It says, I'm not a politician. I have no fear of Trump administration. And U.S. judge dismisses $10 billion Trump defamation suit against WSG rather. Okay, let's talk a little around the Middle East crisis. It has seen Trump do a number of things. Since the crisis started, and Iran has been pretty adamant about their take on the Strait of Hormuz, only allowing those they've had some sort of arrangement with to pass through, and
friendly ships.
Friendly ships. China is one of those. Now, the U.S. President Trump has insisted that he wants to block off the Strait of Hormuz. So this prevents Iran or any other from passing through. It's like a strong move that deters anybody from passing through, just to force Iran's hand. This is as, of course, the ceasefire talks have collapsed. And they're looking for ways to come up around, do the talks again. But what are your thoughts on all of these? One had said that Trump knows what he's doing. One has said that Trump knows what he's doing, but does this look like a Trump that knows what he's doing? He had clearly seen that violence was not the way, and upon seeing that, decided to go the way of talks. Now the talks also have failed.
Well, for the US now, I think they're just trying to save their faces, because the war in general has been an embarrassment to the US, because they had the objectives. They felt like they were going to overpower.
Inflation that's climbed over 4%.
Yeah, they felt they were going to topple the regime in Iran. Of course, they did kill Ayatollah Khomeini, but his son has now come in. So the regime that they were hoping to change, although the supreme leader was changed, but the same regime is still there in Iran. So in terms of regime change, they've not necessarily been able to make that.
Which is one of their objectives for the war, right?
And then you look at the situation with the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is definitely losing the war when you talk about militarily, but they know they have this leverage, that the Strait of Hormuz. So if they can control the Strait of Hormuz and control what passes, they know they have the US, they have their hands on the necks of the US. So the US at this point, they are desperate. Of course, they need the oil passing from the Strait of Hormuz.
US strike a Chinese ship that is passing through?
No, I don't necessarily see that. It could lead to more tension, further tensions. Now be drawing the likes of China directly into the conflict, and I think for now the US would want to avoid this, especially considering the fact that its allies, talking about the British, the Germans, and the French, have always been opposing this their operations in Iran. So you don't want to be going into wars against a major power like China.
Can you even point out nations and countries that are supporting this?
For now, it's just the US and Israel. So they're
like alone in this.
They are alone in this. All these normal, its traditional allies are currently condemning the operations. But at this point, we'll see what happens from the blockade, because the US is trying to they are trying to get the little control that they can from that region. But with regards to, he initially threatened that to carry out a military operation, to use ground troops to carry out an invasion of Iran. That's still pending, but the blockade is going to give them a little more control of the region, and maybe it could also be signs of a potential invasion of Iran, but that would be very hard for them to actually.
Alrighty, we check out the Punch paper this morning. Of 2027 elections, Abiodun Oshoba, Daniel Amonson endorsed Yayi Ogun APC governorship candidate. That's a story that the Punch is reporting. They also have the late story around Tinubu moving against terrorists after fresh military casualties. We already told you how a commander, 6 soldiers were killed, and the president meeting the French general and service chiefs. That's the Punch paper for you. The Nigerian Tribune, above the nameplate, ADC dares INEC holds convention today. That's how they put it, right? That's a story that's contained on page 18. Supreme Court here's Mark's appeal, and Wike says there's no request to use Eagle Square. This is following talks by the ADC that they had tried to use the Eagle Square and another center they had written to the authorities, but were not granted access to use that. It's like opposition being stifled, not even allowing oppositions to get to be able to use a building or a center for their convention.
Well, ordinarily they should be allowed to be at least they should be given the square so they can at least carry out their convention. But for the ADC, of course, they will see it as maybe the presidency trying to, should I say, crush opposition, because irrespective of the fact that you say Wike is from the PDP, it still works under the administration of the ruling party, which is the leadership of Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC. So there's always going to be that tag that he's doing it, he's working for the president, so the president is trying to crush opposition. But I feel like I'm not really sure of what really is hindering them. Of course, Wike denying that is blocking them from using Eagle Square, but before they are coming out to make these claims, of course, there's something really brewing underneath.
Well, their convention is holding today at the Rainbow Event Center. I mean, after this, their place filled. We are looking forward to that to see what the outcome is. Also, the case in court, the Supreme Court will be hearing their case today alongside that of the PDP. Do you see them coming out smiling from this case? I mean, the Court of Appeal had dismissed the appeal he filed, and now the appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is hearing it today. But this is the hearing, of course, but do you see a movement or a decision of the Supreme Court in their favor?
When you talk about the decision in their favor, it's a little bit tricky, because it's a situation between David Mark and Nafiu Bala Gombe. So if they ruled in favor of David Mark, of course the factions of Nafiu Bala Gombe would come out and they will cry and they may go on to appeal or something. But
can you appeal after the Supreme Court has made a decision?
well, that will there will definitely be there will be that at least there will be the resentments. They may not necessarily take the ruling, but I don't think it will be a complete end to the saga.
But what if, for instance, now the Supreme Court rules? Let's not preempt the court, anyways. Well, if the Supreme Court rules that, well, the David Mark leadership, they're not authentic leadership, and so they should immediately relinquish whatever positions they are currently holding, that they took the party in ways that are not exactly legal and legitimate, and so they should just relinquish their positions. How does this leave the opposition, especially the ADC that are coming together? The PDP has, the PDP also has its challenges, because currently the PDP that is legally recognized is that of the Wike faction, the other faction seem to also be waiting for their judgment today. So the judgment from the Supreme, their hearing rather, could have a judgment that rules in favor of the PDP faction that's loyal to Wike, or the other that's loyal to the governors, Shea Makinde and the rest.
Well, of course, whatever the ruling is, there will always be parties that would not be happy about it, but at least when you get the ruling, it's at least a signal for you already know the outcome, so you have to start working to at least to get beyond that ruling.
What's clear is that it's a hearing for today, and hopefully the ruling comes out soon. Well, another story there is around suspected herders killing 47-year-old farmer in Ibadan community. It's on page 3. Ogun APC adopts EI as governorship candidate already. I have taken that story already. But the herders story is something also we are facing. If there's any insecurity that we're facing that's of good concern, it's that of herder and farmer clashes that we have not quite figured, even if we have some sort of act to help fight that, but yet we have not seen much done by government as regards the fight against this herder and them going into farms owned by those who are residents in Bayelsa State, particularly in Yenagoa, destroying farmlands and all of those.
This is a situation that is very worrisome. If we talk about maybe insecurity in Borno states like Boko Haram, that's just in one area. But the situation with the herders is more widespread, and I think for the government, they've been shielding these herders for a long time. They've not necessarily put up a strong resistance towards the activities. A lot of people do consider them first-class citizens and the rest of Nigerians as second-class citizens, and it's very unfortunate because at this point we expect that there should be regulations, at least on national level, that should be restricting these herders, because they are encroaching into the farmlands of people and they're eating the crops. And it's going to have a significant effect not just on the lives of these people but on the nation as a whole, because food production will be hampered. So it's really sad that these people they've been allowed to continue operating, but I really don't see anything improving soon.
Alrighty, on the Vanguard paper, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy is he is the lead story on the paper, and he's talking around the Middle East war. He says that federal government is responding to economic shock. This is as policy experts are advising that policy missteps in trade systems may hurt consumers, and also there is a writer that says Naira stability comes at heavy cost as FX reserves decline. That's the story that you got on page 5 of the Vanguard paper. And away from that to the Business Day paper, Nigeria turns wealthy lifestyle habits into tax funnel. That's like, the only story other than the story on the Nigeria Revenue Service. That's on the Business Day paper. I'll check out the Daily Trust paper. Against odds, ADC holds convention today. Like we mentioned earlier, the convention could mean that, upon the convention and the Supreme Court hearing, at the end of the day, it could be that they will cancel the convention and cancel the David Mark leadership, or it goes in their favor. And then they continue with their political party happy ever after. Tariff cut on vehicles rise could weaken local production, says experts. And the story around court ruling on RFI's bail application is today. I also saw a story of RFI saying that he is with the ADC in spirit. He's behind bars, yeah, but well, he was there saying he's with the ADC in spirit. Again, the story around the commander and soldiers being killed in Boko Haram ambush also makes it to the Daily Trust paper this morning. I'll check out the Daily Trust, and very close to the masthead is a story around Wiki, with him saying he never denied ADC others use of Eagle Square. Also on the ADC, we have not seen this particular story. It's a rider that's contained on the story I took earlier. It's contained on page 27, by the way. Faction sacks Atiku Babache in Adamawa. The Babache is Babache Lawal, the former secretary to the government of the Federation. They've been sacked in Adamawa State. The faction of the ADC in Adamawa State has sacked them. You'd want to find out why that sack is. I mentioned earlier that it's contained on page 27 of the Daily Sun paper this morning. Crude jumps 8% or on ceasefire collapse. Markets move hike. So, well, it talks of military involvement from Trump has again pushed market and pushed crude rather to some 8% on top of what it was. And this is, of course, following the ceasefire collapse. Outrage over murder of Colonel, 6 soldiers and fresh terrorist raid. That story we've already taken. I'll soon decide on Abia Guba contest, says Reps Deputy Speaker Benjamin Carlo. Recall that there's been that talk that Benjamin Carlo, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, is mulling to contest under the APC the Abia State governorship election, and that's against someone people have described as performing. I think Alex Oti has really used the media very well. If people say there is a lot of improvement in Abia State from what it was, and there are many persons who would rate Alex Oti
as one of the best performing
governor in Nigeria. There are many persons who do that rating on Alex Oti. How easy it is for Benjamin Carlo, who is highly placed as well, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, come in and clinching the seat from Alex Oti.
I think it would be unlikely for him to do it, because for Alex Oti, like you mentioned, is one of the best performing governors. One of the significant achievements he's had was improving the electricity situation in Abia State. So of course, Abia now boasting of at least constant power supply. So a lot of the people currently support
not Abia. Aba and its environs.
The Aba and its environs, but it's still within Abia State. So a lot of people in Abia State are still at least pleased with how he's handled his governance. But with regards to Carlo coming up against him, of course, the Deputy Speaker, and he has the influence. Of course, he's one of the few people that you feel like will be able to give him a strong contest in the next election. But I really don't see him putting Carlo off seat.
Okay, well, IMF warns Nigeria others against policy missteps, says Middle East crisis has pushed nations into survival mode. I believe this is exactly what Wale Edun was responding to there on the other papers. Sharia Council insists on registration of INEC, on resignation, I beg your pardon, really, of INEC chairman. The ADC did a protest against the INEC chairman and against what they perceive the stifling of the political party. That was sometime last week. Well, this is the Sharia Council now insisting on the resignation of INEC chairman. And there's also been that talk that the INEC chairman is a supporter of the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They said they've seen several posts of him on Twitter, before now, supporting the president, and so he's biased as an arbiter. He ain't supposed to be, as an umpire. He ain't supposed to be biased, and that's what they're saying. So he should resign. He
was brought in first by the current administration, so there's that loyalty that is normally expected, and it begs the question: should a ruling party be able to? Should they be allowed to bring in someone like in the position of an INEC chairman? that's a position that should be neutral. So that's also one question that we should be asking ourselves as Nigerians. But with regards to the position of Ahamuefula, the INEC chairman, I don't know if I don't want to just come up and say he's biased. But for the ADC situation, he was the court ruling is actually based on the filing by Bala Gombe. So they are acting on the protest, the disputes within the party.
The decision to see that, I mean, from what the court said, antebellum, that has been controversial. They said the court said the whole thing should just go back to antebellum, the way it was before all of the controversy. And some would think that would be to bring in Ralph Nwosu, who was the chairman. That would be antebellum proper. But INEC now decided to recognize nobody, and as it stands now, the ADC has no leadership. Is that really what antebellum is?
Not necessarily. Of course, there has to be a real decision. Whatever the court, I feel like the court should be the supreme decider in this. But
INEC took a decision.
No, but I don't necessarily think what the decision from INEC should be fair. There has to be at least, if you're not necessarily identifying this person as a leader, you have to identify someone else. So they basically put them on a standstill at this point. But with regards to the fairness of
Ralph Nwosu he's not been challenged in a way that, I mean, no court has said that Ralph Nwosu wasn't supposed to hold. And Bala, the Gombini man who is challenging the current leadership that was suspended or that was removed from the INEC database, is also not challenging Ralph Nwosu. He's only challenging the process with which Ralph Nwosu handed over. He said he's not a party to that particular process, and so, well, it should be the national chairman if Ralph Nwosu is...
Even with Ralph Nwosu, he's always been facing opposition from Dumebi Kashiko as well. So there's always...
That's a different case.
That's a different case.
That
so if you're going to be bringing Ralph Nwosu, he's always been having this disputes with others as well within the ADC. So the saga still, unfortunately, would seem like it will continue.
Well, the last story on the Daily Sun is around Ndume crying out over escalating insecurity in Borno State. Ndume crying out over escalating insecurity in Borno State. Alrighty, before we go, we check out the Punch. That's sports. Punch Sport Extra. Well, no Oshimen, no party. The big story, right? Star striker's injury exposes Gala's struggles in title running. That's a daily story on the Punch Sport Extra. And then another story there is around Reds out to avoid UCL exit. And also Catalans bid to overturn home deficit is also a story that the Punch Sport Extra is reporting. Arsenal targets Fabregas to replace Arteta. Madrid ready to offload Gracia for Endrick. Seals on alert for Dembele is also a story that makes it to the Punch Sport Extra. Rosinio identifies summer signings. Africa can produce world table tennis champion. It's also a story that's contained on page 2 of the Sports Extra. And Okonkwo Balogun signed WNBA pre-season deal. Onyedika also has been he makes it to the Punch Sport Extra. They say Onyedika ends a Bonnie Shoe nomination. Ghana appoints ex-Madrid coach ahead of World Cup. With this, does it really mean something? First off, I mean, they are going to the World Cup and Nigeria is not going to the World Cup.
That's a shame.
Well, Nigeria is not going to the... Whatever happened to that particular case we had at FIFA?
It was rolled out. DR Congo eventually went to it.
Good. Now, did I say good?
Unfortunately,
I beg you, please. I'm in Nigeria, please don't come for me. All right, so but Ghana appointing ex-Madrid coach ahead of World Cup. You think this is some big move by Ghana?
Yeah, it's a big move. They did part ways with their manager. The manager who enabled them who qualified them for the World Cup in the first place. This friendlies he was losing. They eventually sacked him. They were like, no, we can't be losing terribly. I think they lost 5-1 to Austria, and then they lost 2-1 to Germany. So they were kind of disappointed with those results. So they need a manager that will be able to at least ensure that the country competes when they play in the World Cup. But bringing this man, I think you have to read to get the name of the person. But he was once, like it's mentioned, he was once a manager of Real Madrid, so the biggest team in the world, you'd say. But he's been inactive for Of course, it is. He's been inactive for some time, but he does have a lot of experience, and I feel he would at least put up a good performance with the Ghanaians in the FIFA World Cup.
You know that we are always at daggers drawn as per sports
Nigeria,
with
Ghanaians, yeah.
Ghana. But given that we are not going to the World Cup, should we be rooting for Ghana or not? People don't go watch World Cup.
To be fair, I think most Nigerians will be eager for Ghana to feel, so there will be that banter between the two. But no love. There's always no love lost between Nigerians and Ghanaians.
UCL, the Sporting Son, UCL, Lukman to start against Baka. Wambali rates South African Moroccan leagues attractive. Real Madrid resigns Nico Paz for 9 million euro, right? Okay. Atletico, Yamal looks to LeBron James for inspiration. And also the story that we already have taken is around Dembele reviving hope for Saudi move. All of these stories, anyone that catches your interest?
Well, I think I'm more interested in the other one, which from the Point Sports Extra, and talking about Arsenal targeting Fabregas to replace Arteta. That's a big story considering Arsenal's season. They were tipped to win the Premier League. So a lot of people tipped them to win at least 4 trophies this season, and now they're currently down to 2 trophies. For the Premier League, it does seem like it's hanging in the balance, and there's a lot of speculations. Should Arsenal continue with Mikel Arteta? Should they fail to win the Premier League title this season? And now there's this story about them being linked to Cesc Fabregas, who's been doing very well with Como. So that's a very big story, and of course, all eyes will be set on the UCL tonight when Liverpool faces Paris Saint-Germain, and of course, Atletico Madrid will be hosting FC Barcelona. So big games to be seen tonight.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Gladiaki.
Thank you so much.
It's been really interesting having you come around to help unpack these stories.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
My name is Henry Ahamuefula. Thank you plenty for staying with us all through the Papers Review segment. Don't go nowhere. We'll bring you the Globe in View in a moment. Well, have a nice day.